Happy Halloween, everyone. We are here today to discuss our October book of the month with some friends. I guess we can
Hello.
go around the room. Lauren, did you want to introduce yourself and tell us about your channel?
Sure. My name is Lauren, and my channel is Paperback Empire. I read primarily science fiction and urban fantasy, but I also really enjoy high fantasy and horror, the occasional thriller, sometimes a literary fiction, but primarily sci-fi and urban fantasy. I'm super excited to be here today.
Cool.
Hey, I'm Ashley from Read Now Sleep Later. I read everything under the sun from fantasy to romance to horror. I mean, I don't know if there's anything I don't read, but my favorite is horror and fantasy, and that's what I typically talk about.
Awesome. So, our book was House of Leaves, and it is quite
No, I'm
an
just kidding.
experience. Yeah. Don't drop it on yourself. Be careful.
Yeah, oh, so heavy.
So, we can go and let's start with non spoilers because Ashley, you're not quite caught up yet. So, we'll
I'm
start with that
there. I'm
before you.
almost there, and it's driving me nuts.
Yeah.
Today we're supposed to be going to Boo at the Zoo because I'm in Texas. I'm gonna finish it before we leave to go to the zoo. It's happening.
What time are you going, or how long from now?
Like 2 hours.
Ooh.
Yeah, I don't know.
We better talk quick then.
Yeah.
I'm gonna scarf it down. No, if I don't finish it, that's all right. But I will. I will finish it eventually.
Yeah.
Eventually. Yeah, I don't think it's a book you should rush through or it's a kind of a book that you should just take your time
Yeah.
Hmm.
and absorb it. So Brandy's here. She's in the other room watching.
Hi, Brandy.
And our
Yeah.
friend Saf is here. Saf, did you read House of Leaves? Let us
Hey,
know.
Brandy.
Yeah, Brandy's not quite there. She was gonna join us and then she thought she didn't want to join if she wasn't finished. I think she's has like 100 pages to go
Oh
before
yeah.
before the appendix. So we can go ahead and start with some non-spoiler thoughts. Lauren, do you want to start us off and tell us what your thoughts were about it?
Yeah. Just kind of my overall impression of the book. It was one of those. It plagued my thoughts whenever I wasn't reading it, which is very rare for me. Whenever I find a book that I definitely think about books after I put them down, but whenever I feel like it's kind of running in the background at all times, like that's a pretty special experience for me. So overall, I really, really enjoyed the experience of reading it. I've never read anything quite like it. Um, I don't think it was a perfect book for me. Um, and we were kind of before we went live, we were discussing this briefly that there were some parts in it that were a little dry, that kind of like okay. But other than that, I really enjoyed the book. I thought it was like very thematically rich. uh, it was very I don't know, just kind of there were aspects of it that I was sort of expecting, but others that sort of took me off guard. uh, just a good time. Is there an
Ashley,
eagle in the room?
I think Ashley's outside enjoying nature.
Oh, okay.
Oh, my bad. Shut up, birds.
And then
Yeah,
Brandy was
my
saying, "I
family's
wish I would have
inside.
started at the beginning of the month too. It just took my time, and it played my subconscious too. I dream about it.
Yeah. Yeah, I had one as soon as I finished it the day that I finished it that night, I dreamt about it.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Ashley, what were your? Well, you're not quite done yet. You're about halfway through. So what are your thoughts on it? Your non-spoilery
I
thoughts.
have to agree with Lauren. Just like the format of the book is amazing. I don't know if you guys have ever read it, but there was a book by R.L. Stein where you kind of got to pick and choose your adventures.
Yeah.
But with this, it's more of like in order to get the whole story, there's bits and pieces that you have to go back to and look. Like there's one area specifically that I was reading, and it was like footnote 123. So like, okay, I'll flip back to 123, and then it started talking about a minotaur, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like I read that before, not thinking of it, not making connections, and then reading after what happened to the crew and Navy, I was just like, what? Like, it's fitting so perfectly. It's just good. It's a good puzzle piece fitting together. But I'm obsessed with it. I'm probably going to say it's going to be a 5-star just because I really like the fact that it almost feels like I'm a personal investigator. Like I'm sitting here checking out this caseload and I'm looking through all the stuff. So in a sense, I almost feel like I'm an editor. But I really love it. It's got a little bit of a lore. Wouldn't you guys agree?
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
Especially referring back to like the Minotaur. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, it felt like a lot of things came full circle, and that being like an example of that. Things that are mentioned early on, you're like, this seems significant, but I don't know, and you kind of forget about it, and then later on, you're like, oh.
Yeah, like the pieces start to connect, which I think that's why it's taken me so long to read it, because I'm one of those that I want to absorb every single fact, like, and just really like picture it in my mind. And there's a lot of stuff to consume in this book.
Yeah.
There was a lot. And Brandy says, my favorite part was figuring out how to read this book.
Yeah.
I think it's very different.
It took me a whole week to get past the 10 pages.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm the same way, where I feel like any book I read, I have to read and digest every single word. Otherwise, I haven't really quite read the book. And I think you kind of, the farther you read into House of Leaves, although you can go all in with it and, go down every single possible rabbit hole, every word. But I think for me, I had to sort of I came to the conclusion I had to accept the fact that there's plenty of information in the book that I think is less about reading and digesting all the exact meanings and more about creating an effect, and being in like getting that effect rather than going through this footnote that has 5,000 names on it. Like, I don't need to read every single name,
Yeah. I kind of got it. I was like, okay, yeah, you're unhinged. I get it. Let's move on.
Yeah. So.
Brandy says I could have done without some of the copious amounts of detail. Example, Karen's claustrophobic. Here are 10 pages on claustrophobia. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I could see, but I liked the part about how they went in depth with the echo. I don't know if you guys remember that part, where there's just some sort of, I guess it was Navy or something, and then like somebody goes off on a tangent about echo, and then goes into the scientific bits, and I really enjoyed that, but it could have been done with a little less details. Like I didn't need, like I felt like I was reading a medical journal. Like I'm not in college anymore. I don't need to read stuff like this. I'm a stay-at-home mom. Like, I can kind of stay on that level, but I'm like, my brain is dumb. I had a child. My brain is so dumb right now.
That's not true.
That's funny. Now that I'm thinking about the section about.
But what'd you guys think about? What'd y'all think about? What'd y'all think about Truant? Can you hear me?
Yeah. I think you might be a little behind. You still there?
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
But what was the last thing y'all said? Because for some reason my Wi-Fi.
You asked what we thought about Johnny Truant. Yeah. I personally, I feel like Johnny Truant was meant to be a very pitiable character. I think a lot of people see him in terms of whether you like him or dislike him. And I don't know that he's supposed to be liked or disliked. I think he's just sort of an object of like sadness and pity. And that's, he was a very complex character. I think he was gross, like he was slept around and was just, losing touch and just kind of like, ugh. But at the same time, as you're reading his backstory, it's just like, he's just a receptacle of sadness. So I mostly I felt really bad for him. Yeah, that was just kind of my overall. At the beginning, I definitely was like, I don't like him, and I like that about him. I like characters that aren't likable and are meant to be unlikable.
Mm-hmm.
I can really appreciate a character like that. But as it went, he just became sad.
Ashley, what did you think about
Yeah, you
Johnny?
definitely get a deep dive into. He seemed very lonely, even though like he was spending so much time with these people. He slowly turns into this recluse, and like for example, there's a part in there that I read like where he was basically soundproofing and making his apartment as dark as possible. He was kind of retreating into himself, like Zampano, something like that.
Zampano.
But yeah, and I mean, because you can like even then, it's like, okay, this guy that started this whole project for the Davidson record was alone. He rarely came out. He was very much a hermit crab, and he died that way. So I haven't read it yet, but I'm assuming that in the end, Johnny is going to meet the same fate. That's my hypothesis.
Guess we'll have to find out.
Yeah.
And Brandy says, I did like the references to Greek and Roman mythology. And she's enjoying Johnny's part of the story.
Yeah.
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 And Jared Smith is here. Hey, Jared. Just subscribe to all of you. Well, thanks for coming by. And
Hi.
have not read this book, but it doesn't sound good. Yeah. So we are
Thank
trying
you.
to avoid the spoilers. But we'll let everyone know when we get into spoilers because there's a lot to unravel here.
Yeah.
He has almost a genetic predisposition to mental illness. Getting to read his mom's letters was chilling.
Mm-hmm.
So, before I started reading, I had heard some people don't read the footnotes. They skip all the footnotes and just read the stories. And I considered doing that. And then I talked to a few other people who have read it, and they said for sure do not skip the footnotes because you miss a lot. So, Lauren,
Yeah.
did you hear that too, or did you hear that some people don't read the footnotes?
Yeah. Yeah, I've definitely heard that. And I read the book as intended, just beginning to end. And I can see how, I think I said this to Yolene because she had mentioned the same thing and whether or not she should read the footnotes. I think that if you start the book and the footnotes are so distracting that they're making you want to put the book down, then skip the footnotes. Like give it a try without them. So I kind of went into it thinking, because I'd heard the same thing. I'm going to get going and just kind of see what this whole footnote situation is about. And I was planning on like, if I can't handle these footnotes, I will skip them. But I was able to like handle it, and they became, yeah, definitely, obviously an integral part of the story. So other than the excessively long lists of names and stuff like that, I read them all.
Yeah, I think if kind of makes me a little sad that people skip them because it's a whole. You don't get the full, but you don't really get the full impact of the book if you skip them. Ashley, did you hear that some people skip the footnotes too? I think we talked about it a little bit on the forum, but
Yeah, I heard somebody telling me that they didn't read the footnotes, but by that time I was pretty like a couple chapters into it, and if you skip the footnotes, then you're skipping Johnny's part of the story. And then, I mean, I could see like maybe skipping the parts with the names, like that long list of names, or the whole oh, there's something about carpentry and like housework and something like a list of like, and then there was a list of houses or a list of
Architecture.
historical sites. Yeah, architecture. Thank you. Yes. Now I'm just like, what? And so I skipped through those parts. It kind of registered in my mind. I'm like, okay, I'm not gonna like deep dive into this. And then going into the footnotes, I'm like, I'm so glad that I didn't skip this because I feel like a good portion, a good like critical portion of the book would have been missing.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think so. I
So
can see
anyone else?
though. Oh,
I'm
sorry.
sorry. No, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I can see how though if you read just and I may go back and do this now that I've read the entire book and the footnotes and all the stuff. If you went back through and read just the Davidson record and just if you did skip the footnotes and read straight through beginning to end the Davidson record, I can also see how that would have an even more profound effect. Because the footnotes, I think, and I feel like this is kind of similar to when a book switches POVs frequently, like every chapter, you kind of build tension with one chapter or one POV, and then it dies, and then you build tension. You just kind of go on this pattern throughout the book. So I think the footnotes in House of Leaves kind of did that, where it would build tension. All this crazy stuff happens, and it's like, read this 50-page footnote, and so you kind of chill out, But I can see how if you just read just the Davidson record straight through, no footnotes, that it would be even more chilling, have a pretty profound effect. But I don't know that I would recommend doing that the first time through. But having read it now, I think I would probably do that.
Interesting.
Did you guys ever feel that the footnotes would take you away from the Davidson record? Like, did it ever take you out of the story?
What do you think, Steve?
I think sometimes it did. I think it got a little too in the weeds, and I know what they were trying to. I know the book is so unique and different that they try to take you on this, give you so much information that sometimes it's just too much. It's like, okay, like Lauren, I mentioned earlier, okay, I get it. Let's move on. Let's, okay, echoes are cool and everything, but let's, there's some other parts that I won't mention specifically that go off on tangents that I don't know if they really needed to be there. It kind of went a little overboard. So in those cases, it did take me out of the story a little bit, but not too much. I mean, I still get what they were trying to do.
Yeah.
What about you, Lauren?
Yeah. Yeah, same feeling. Although I would say the further I got into the book and the more I grasped like the effect that all of it was, like the purpose of it all, it started to have a different kind of sensation to me. Like the book is meant to feel like a labyrinth and sort of mirror what's happening. And so that sense of like, because I went through a lot of emotions reading it, whether it was just like irritation or like confusion or like being kind of lost, like whenever there would be like reference footnote whatever 203 and you're like, where is 203? So feeling that sort of lost, and footnotes being referenced multiple times, and some of the footnotes that were like symbols or letters that would be referenced again later, so you can't find them as readily because they're not numbered, stuff like that. So once I sort of submitted to like the effect of it, it took me out, I would say, a little bit less, but nonetheless, like, there tended to be a footnote whenever it was like in a climactic situation and you're like, I don't want to read the footnote, I want to know what happens next.
I'm so glad I'm not the only one that responded that way, because there were so many times I had to peel my eyes away from the Davidson record parts to read the footnotes. I'm like, I don't want to do this. I just want to continue the Davidson record.
Yeah.
And Nora's here. Hey, good morning. It did it for me, but I can't stand the Johnny stuff. Yeah, I can see how people would. I mean, like Lauren mentioned, I think he's supposed to be unlikable.
Yeah.
But I kind of I enjoy unlikable characters, so it's kind
Yeah.
of fun.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of like unlikables and villains, and those are some of my favorites.
Yeah.
But I think that's really common, like really not liking Johnny and people not wanting to finish the book because in a lot of ways he's kind of a scumbag.
Yeah, definitely. Good
Morning.
So before we get into the spoilery stuff, do you guys have any non-spoilery thoughts before we move on? Well, I guess a better question would be: would you recommend this? Who would you recommend this book to?
Ooh,
A seasoned reader.
yeah.
Definitely not one of those, because it makes you think. It really makes you think. It's a very deep book. If I
Mhm.
would have read this 3 or 4 years ago, I wouldn't have been able to finish it. But because I've been reading and progressing more into the more difficult kind of stuff, so because 4 years ago, I wasn't reading that many books. But yeah, I would recommend for a seasonal reader, somebody who doesn't mind taking the time to really dissect every single piece that is in this book.
Yeah. Yeah, I would agree on that. And a few people that I've talked to about it since I've been reading and read it, it's like, because you want to talk to people about it because it's just like, this book, oh my gosh. And then they're like, oh, I want to read it too. And I'm like, do you?
I don't know if you'll pass the test.
Yeah, I give caveats about it. Like, prepare to, read some like textbook like stuff. And, it's a dense book. It's a heavy hitter. Like, maybe thumb through it before you buy it.
Well, it's funny because it's like you see the size, and then it's like 700 pages long, and then you kind of skim through it, and you see all these pages with almost nothing on them, and you think, well, that's not too bad then.
Yeah.
But then you start reading it, and you realize that it is dense.
Yeah.
It is really dense, and both of you had kind of mentioned earlier is that there's little details that you don't really think matter, but later on they can matter. So
Yeah.
you have to really take your time.
Yeah, I also, kind of a side anecdote, one of my coworkers who I was sort of giving, as I was reading it, giving a play-by-play of what was happening in the book because she was really drawn into the idea of it, but was like, intimidated by it and not really into horror, but she wanted to know. She wanted to know. So like every day would be like, okay, let me tell you what happened today in House of Leaves. Which was a
This
lot
is
of
the
fun, like
key.
really telling the story.
Yeah. Was she as confused as you were reading it sometimes?
Well, she wasn't reading it. So
But was she just you conveying the story to her? Was she confused too as you were telling her the story, as you were reading and telling her?
she was, well, yes and no. She was definitely asking a lot of questions. Like she wanted to know, like, um, why are these people? Why don't they think this house is haunted? Like, why aren't they getting out of this house? Why does everyone want to go into that hallway? Yeah. I'm like, I truly don't know why, because I would be getting out of that house. But yeah, she was asking like a lot of questions along the way for clarification.
And Brady says, I would recommend to go slow and take breaks. Yeah, it's not
Yeah.
a book you should rush through. You should definitely take your time with it. There's just so much. I'm sure I missed a lot because there's just so much in the text that it's hard to keep up.
Yeah.
Oh, we lost Ashley.
Bye, Ashley.
Yeah. The eagle must have gotten her Wi-Fi.
Yeah, carried her away.
Yeah. So let's get into spoilers. Spoiler territory. So if you haven't read House of Leaves, we are going to be going into spoilers. So if you're at all interested in reading this book, I would recommend experiencing it. It is definitely an experience. It's they must have spent so much time on this book, and with I mean, there's all the exhibits and letters and information. I mean, they spent I don't know how long this would have taken to write and to put together and make sense. So I would definitely say go read it if you're curious about it. Just try it out.
Yeah, for sure.
So
And that mentioning like taking it in small doses, going slow. Don't try to read it. Bye, Randy.
Brandy,
Don't try to read it all in one sitting.
yeah, definitely. So let's get into the meat and potatoes of it.
Let's dig in.
Yeah. Oh, Ashley's back. Hey, Ashley, you back?
That was spooky. Something happened.
Uh oh.
I think this house doesn't like me.
You should probably move.
Uh-oh, you need to get out.
Thank goodness I'm only visiting.
Didn't we just
If
talk
you-
about this? Yeah.
Yeah.
If you go in and there's a door that wasn't there before, do not open it.
Yeah.
No.
I'm too afraid. Too much of a scaredy cat. Be like, hey, if anybody's in there, bye. I'm not coming in.
Like push a dresser up against it.
A caution tape. Like, please do not pass.
Oh, Ben from Literature and Lo-Fi are here. Hey, Ben. I heard you were talking about books. I had to check it
Hi.
out. Yeah, we're talking about House of Leaves. We're about to get into the spoilery stuff. So if you haven't read it, I would recommend reading it first. It is a journey for sure. So
Well,
Ashley
before
will.
Oh, go ahead. No, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say we won't spoil past where you are. So do you want to start us off with spoilery talk?
Yeah, before I got rudely disconnected, aka my stupid laptop, I saw this. It was I don't know if the review was on Goodreads or what, but it was basically this guy in the military, and he's talking about how much of a big impact it was to him, and how I don't know, it was really neat. But if you guys ever get the chance, go look on Goodreads and read his review. It's a pretty long review, but it's worth it, and it just sums everything up perfectly.
Mm. Isn't there which character is it in the book that was in the military? Am I remembering that correctly?
I thought Navy and Reston.
Wasn't
Holloway?
Holloway? I think he was in the. I think he was in the
Yeah.
military. Yeah. He had some
Yeah.
training.
Yeah, and there was like some discussion. I could see how that book would be very affecting to someone who's been in the military for sure. How that
Oh
can
yeah,
end up.
he was talking about how he's got that copy that his battle buddy gave him while they were overseas, and how he basically has it locked up in a firebox, and there's a little note because he hasn't to this day seen his battle buddy since, and so it's so cool how sentimental it is. I just thought that was fascinating.
Yeah, that is interesting.
So Ashley, what are your? I don't want to spoil anything for you, so let's go ahead and start us off on spoilery talk.
I mean, if you spoil it for me, it's fine. I'm kind of getting impatient anyways.
No,
But
no, I'm not spoiling it for you. No,
dang it! I thought you were gonna
Refuse.
make it easy on me.
no. Because I will say this,
Um,
where I thought the book, what I thought the end was going to be sort of happened about 2/3 in, and then I was like, what are we going to do for the last third? And I was not expecting what happened and how it ended. So it was a really great ending. So I am not spoiling it for you.
Yeah.
dang it!
If
Yeah.
the end sucked, I'd be like, okay, we can talk about it. But I think you should.
Yeah. But it's a great ending.
And I have
So, I don't-
questions about the ending. So
I don't know if I would really consider any of this spoilery, but I'm just really interested in the whole, just the relationships with these characters. Like, I almost feel like Johnny is very similar to Navy in a way. And I feel like it's almost like things are repeating. I don't know. I could be totally wrong, but that's what I'm getting at the feeling as far as right now. Because I'm on page like 319. So like just into the juicy bits. I don't know.
Yeah.
Like people are dying. I don't know who's gonna die. Where's Holloway? Like I need to know where he's at. What's wrong with the children? Who is helping with the
They're creepy.
Especially that part where the teacher is talking about her or Chad's picture of like it looked like the abyss, and then there's these little figurines. I was like, why are you going so in depth into something that has figurines? And then it goes from there to Grace having the same thing, basically the same drawing in her classroom. And that I just like, there's so much stuff going on. And then the feng shui, and those, you know, statues almost just going away. I'm like, there's so much to connect here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's a lot. And Jared, thanks for coming by. And if you end up reading the book, let us know how you like it.
Yeah, bye, Jared.
Good luck with writing.
Yeah, I think that one of the biggest and most obvious themes in the book is one of obsession.
Mhm.
And it's just these layers of obsession where Davidson is obsessed with this labyrinth, then Zampano is obsessed with the family's experience, then Johnny is obsessed with Zampano's experience, and then we're obsessed with the whole thing. It's just this like onion layers of obsession.
Good point.
So
Good point.
I guess you don't have to answer this now, but what rating did you give this book?
That's such a good question.
It's too early in the morning for me to ask these questions, but I'm just curious.
Yeah, I think that I usually after I read a book, I'll try to take a while to like think about it before, because generally my first impression of any book changes the more I like think about it and sort of stew on it. So I think that especially this book, I think time is really gonna tell like how this sticks with me and in what ways. I will say I don't think, like I was mentioning earlier, I don't think the book is perfect. Like I understood the effect of all these like sort of scientific explanations, and like, you know, I understand what was trying to be done there, but it was, whenever I find myself in a book kind of skimming over stuff, that's not generally like a great sign. Not that I skimmed over a ton of it, but there was some that I was like, I get it. So in that way, I don't think it was perfect in that sort of technical sense. However, the effect that the book overall had on me was perfect. So I don't know. It's like, how much can I overlook technically for like what the book did to me? So I'd probably give it like, I'd probably give it like 4.5 stars, but I would probably round it up on Goodreads right now. I don't know that I'm probably still going to take a little bit longer before I like pull the trigger on that, so to speak. But that's how I feel about it right now.
Reading it, I was thinking it was a 5-star, and then the last third or so, I started thinking, okay, that's when you get through kind of, do I really need to be spending an hour reading about this subject that I'm, and there's a few times when I thought this is just a little too much. Like it doesn't really need this. So I went down to a 4, but I think you made a good point, Lauren, about how you take time to let it kind of stew and take a look back on it. Now that I'm looking back on it, it's only been a couple days, but now that I'm looking back on it, I think it might be closer to a 5, because it's just, in the moment I thought it was a little too much and a little bit annoying sometimes, but now that I'm looking back and looking at it and just taking a step away, I think it might be closer to a 5. So
yeah, and it's hard to like overlook this book in a lot of ways was kind of, the style of it was sort of pioneering, and like the way it was written and the structure of it and the layout, and I'm a designer, and so I'm just like going through this thing like, oh my gosh, this is a masterpiece, this idea. And like, even down to the fonts, like Johnny's font being Courier, which has this sort of meaning in its own right. And then like the story, I think the font is called Dante, that tells the Navidson story. So it's like these tiny little details that add to the overall effect of the book. Like I can't put that aside. Like that is meaningful and significant. Yeah.
And talking about the design of the book, I'm trying to find it now. There was one, and it's not a spoiler, Pat, for you or Ashley, but I'm trying to find it now. But there was one portion where there was like a square. As you're reading on one page, there's like a square, and the letters were reversed.
Yeah.
And the page, the letters were it was turned on its side in the box. So on the other side, they were right side up. But
Yeah.
on the page previous, they were so that was really cool. And I didn't catch that at first. I had to take a
Yeah.
minute to realize what was going on there. But it's just really neat. I mean, it's just really cool.
Yeah.
Really unique.
Or like there was I'm assuming both of you read through Johnny Truant's mother's letters.
Have you gotten that far?
I've read a
Ashley?
few.
You want to read those?
I don't know that this is actually. I don't feel like this is a spoiler because if I tell you and you say it, it's really going to add, in my opinion, to the effect. But if you haven't, she tells Johnny that if he gets her letter and understands what she's saying, whenever he writes back, to put a check mark, right? Put a check mark on his letter so that she'll know that he knows. There is a check mark in the book. And I found
it. I didn't catch that.
Yeah.
Wait a second. What?
Yeah. I don't know. I think it's in maybe like chapter 8. It might take me a minute to find it, but it's just like this little detail that's like, oh my gosh, there's a check mark there. Why is there a check mark there?
And there's one of the letters that his mom says in the letter. She tells him, I'm going to write in this letter, I think it was this letter or the next letter, that I'm going to give it to one of the staff that I trust, and use the first letter of each line or the first letter of each sentence to create a hidden message in the. That was really cool too.
Yeah.
In what order did y'all read those?
Oh, what page is that on?
It is on page 97.
And
I found through the rest of the book, and there are no more check marks. That's like the one.
I like how I'm frantically looking for it over here. Like I have to see it right now.
Wow, that's really neat. I didn't catch that.
Yeah.
So did you guys read the book and then read the letters, or did y'all go and like flip through? Like, I guess what I'm asking is there any point in the book that says, hey, go look at Johnny Truant's letters from his mom?
Yeah.
Because I haven't read across anything, but there has been times where the book's told me to go to like an exhibit A or something like that. So I flipped back through there. Yeah, but I saw those were in there, and I was really bummed. I was like, well, should I go ahead and read those now? So I'm not sure how to proceed.
Yeah, I think it's referenced in one of the footnotes, like the mom's letters are Appendix C or something like that. And I think in one of the footnotes, it's like Appendix C. So, and it's, I can't remember what chapter it's in, but whatever point you're at in the book, I think, even if you're past the part where it references it, like you should go and read them. And I would definitely, I would read them now rather than finishing the book and then going and reading them, because it's going to add, it's going to add to Johnny's story. So
yeah,
I would go on ahead and read them.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, very very neat. With the I don't want to see too much. Yeah, it's very cool. And there was a few that they tell you go to this exhibit, and you go to that exhibit, and then in the exhibit you find what it's referencing, and then you go to another portion of the book. There was a few that you find, and then they take you on another search for something else. That was really neat. Just back and forth and back and forth, and that all somehow connected to each other. The amount of time they spent must have been
Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. I read this. I can't remember what the website was, but it was talking about, I don't know, whenever the article had been written, it had been quite a few years. It may be a fairly recent article, but talking about how Mark Danielewski reread the book after, I can't remember when this was published, around 2000 maybe. And I feel like this article was maybe published within the last 5 years or so, but Mark Danielewski went back and read the book, and whenever he finished it, he would just like wept. He felt like so affected by it and so proud of it. And it had been so many years that his own book just kind of had that effect on him.
I can see this being made into like a 10-episode series. I think it maybe even more than that, maybe more than 10 episodes. I don't think it'd have the same effect because you wouldn't have the kind of the investigator solving a puzzle so much as the book, but someone could adapt this into a really great limited series.
Yeah, I agree. Whew, it would be good. And if anyone's going to do it, it would be Netflix.
Yeah, they do pretty much everything now.
Yeah.
So Ashley, don't want to spoil too much for you, so don't want to get into too much, but it's a 5-star for you so far.
So far, yeah, so far. The parts where it kind of like I guess I would say the characters, but the point of views, especially Johnny's and then Zampino's. I can see Zampino's and why his is a little off because it basically sounds like he's losing his mind while trying to create this, and he's lost in his obsession. But with Johnny, I'm just like, well, there's just so much stuff in there. I'm like, maybe that's because I need to go and read the letters, but there's just a bunch of stuff that takes away from the parts of the Davidson record. I'm like, wait a second, going back to that, but I probably get about 4.5, 5 stars for sure.
And Ben says, or adapt it with David Lynch at the helm. That would be perfect. It's a perfect
Yeah.
project for David Lynch.
That's a fantastic idea. Someone get in touch with David Lynch, Steve. You know how to get connections.
I'll text him. I'll text him right now.
If you could let him know, we'd all really appreciate it.
Hey, David,
like
you want to adapt this book?
It wouldn't be hard. It's set in LA. The book is set in LA.
Yeah.
Doesn't have to travel.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, cool. Well, Ashley, I don't want to spoil you on anything, so you want to give your final thoughts before you peace out and go get good. You going to a pumpkin patch? Is that what you said?
I'm going to Boo at the Zoo.
Boo at the zoo.
Gotta go see some animals. Yes, in costumes. I don't know.
Amazing.
Yeah, but final thoughts. I'm ready to be finished with the book, and not in a bad way, but in just a sense of there's so many questions that I have that I need answered. And I'm growing impatient, but I don't know. Everybody that I've talked to, they're like, "Oh, that sounds like a really good book. Like, I want to read it." I'm like, "Yeah, it's an experience, so good luck." But yeah, I'm enjoying it. But I will leave you guys to it so you guys can freely talk about the spoilery parts. And after I read this, I'll come back to this point and listen to what you guys have to say.
Awesome.
Cool.
All right,
Have
bye,
a good one.
Ashley.
Be careful.
Bye. Happy Halloween. Bye.
Bye.
Okay, so all right, so we can get into the nitty gritty stuff. So
Yeah.
there's so much that it's hard to know where to start.
Yeah, for sure.
You had mentioned the letters, and something that I didn't catch at first was you've learned that his mother had tried to strangle, or at the time his mother tried to strangle him, and the purple, I think she was wearing nail polish, or he had purple marks on his neck.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then when the tattoo ink spilled on him, he had the purple tattoo ink on him.
Ooh, I did not notice that. That's a good observation.
Yeah, it took me a little bit to realize, but yeah, it's little tiny details. There's just so many of them.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like it would, how I was saying earlier, I think it would be, having read the whole book, like to go back through and read just the Navidson record beginning to end, no interruptions. I think it would probably be similar to read the Johnny Truant story beginning to end. So you can like really get all those little details. You know, there are so many, and I feel like I just saw like the tip of the iceberg on what's in that book.
There's just so much in it.
Yeah.
So I guess we can go and start with or let's talk about the end, because I'm a little confused
Okay.
at the end. So I was hoping that one of you would know. So at the end of Johnny's story, it's the same font, and the last section of Johnny's story in that font is the mother who had the baby and was trying to hang on to the baby, and the baby ended up dying at the end.
Mm-hmm.
So I was a little confused on how that tied into Johnny's story.
Yeah. I'm still kind of stewing on that too. It's definitely, I feel like, some sort of metaphor.
Mm.
Um, yeah, some sort of metaphor for the whole thing, which I have not quite. I'm sure I could look it up online, and but I've as well, like that's significant. My brain doesn't know how.
Yeah.
um, yeah, I think that it seems to me that definitely has something to do with like maybe letting go
Mm.
of something that's important to you, something that you love, and like releasing it, maybe.
Mm.
That's just kind of the overall idea, or the initial thought I had as I was reading it.
Mm.
Um,
I like that. I think
especially
that's
since
really good.
especially since the book kind of, it's clearly, like I was mentioning earlier, like dissecting obsession and this sort of consuming desire to like explore and know more. And then in Johnny's story, it was just like, then the mother had to let go. So I don't know, that's kind of my overall impression. I probably will be online later though, being like, okay, what was that?
Yeah, me too. Because towards the end, with Johnny's story, he goes on to say, "I'm sorry, I have nothing left except this story. What I'm remembering now," and that's crossed out on the what's the wrong way? Right here in red,
Oh yeah.
it's crossed out. Um, Too long from the surface of any dawn, the one doc that told me when I was up in Seattle. So it was a story that he was told when he was in Seattle, but didn't he say that he didn't have any doctor friends before that? Because it goes on this little side tangent where he says, I've been working out and I'm eating really good and I'm feeling a lot better, and I'm not as thin anymore. I've filled out. And then he goes on to say, well, if you believed all that, then you haven't been paying attention, because I wouldn't know any doctors. None of that really happened. But then
That's a good point.
at the end, he says, this doctor told me this story, but I thought he didn't know any doctors.
Yeah, that's actually that's a good point. That's a really good point. So it could, in fact, be just sort of as simple as driving home the fact that like he's an unreliable narrator,
Hmm.
and like further evidence of him sort of losing touch with reality. But I feel like there's more to it. Like
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, he
If anyone in
also,
if anyone in the chat has any ideas, just pop them in there.
there was
I'm
another
sorry.
thing I noticed as well whenever he was talking about his mother being taken away. Let's see if I can even find it. I should have marked this. He says something about referencing his mother being taken away and how that 5.5 minutes changed him. I don't know if you recall reading that.
Mm-hmm.
And then, but there's also like the 5.5 minute hallway of the
Oh.
Davidson record. So it's just like, did he invent everything? Like, did he write it all, and he's just kind of delusional about where it came from, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes total sense. Well, it makes sense in House of Leaves sense.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Because my first thought when reading the end of Johnny's story was that he was hallucinating, or it was some like some kind of dream, or at the end of that he was the baby and he was the baby was dreaming at the end right before, and this is all in the baby's mind or some dream or vision or something. So I was wondering because you read it and there's more to it than just a story. There's so
yeah. Perhaps perhaps there's supposed to be some sort of parallel drawn from the story of the mother letting go of the baby that dies, that maybe there's some sort of parallel between Johnny Truitt and his own mother. And some, I don't, my brain's trying to like draw some connections here. But yeah, maybe some sort of parallel between his relationship and with his own mother, and that being like pulled apart.
Yeah, I think you're onto something with the 5.5 minutes. I think there's something to that. I didn't catch that.
Yeah, I wish I could find it. It had whenever I read it, I just like got chills all over. I can keep thumbing through here. I might be able to find it.
It's tough to find stuff in this one.
Oh yeah, it's like a labyrinth. Can you just imagine?
It is like a labyrinth. And some of the other really cool design portions were when Navison was crawling through the house, and when he was crawling through, and the walls were collapsing on him, and the text got smaller and smaller, and changed size. The text got smaller on the page, and it gave you that claustrophobic feeling.
Yeah, that was actually, I think, as far as this sort of style, that for me, that was one of the most effective parts, like seeing it shrink down in that way. That, and whenever I think there was a part when earlier in the book when the stairway was growing and the text was kind of going down at a slant, so you could just sort of feel it. But yeah, that sort of shrinking text. And you can see, I think it starts out with it's like 5 or 6 lines deep, and it goes down to 4 and then 3 and then the 2, and even like sort of the letting, like the space between the lines, like the letters are even kind of starting to overlap just a little bit.
That was so cool.
I really like that part.
That was so neat. Lenora says, "Oh, that part was so sad." Yeah, that was man, that was I think when you talk about obsession, and he was so obsessed that he kept going even when the walls were collapsing, and he knew that there was no way really to get out at that point because he was out of food and water and power. So
yeah, all that was left was just to keep moving forward.
Mm-hmm. And he had come thousands of miles, or however many miles, and the way the staircase would be, just a few, you'd take you just a few minutes to come down, and then when they pulled them back up and they threw the quarter down, and it took, I don't know how long for it to hit the bottom.
Yeah.
So cool.
Yeah. I thought that was really cool. One question I have for you: is there any one part in the story that you found to like be where you were most engaged and like most tense? Was there any one particular part that you were just like, oh my God, what's gonna happen?
Probably, probably with the parts we were talking about with the text, the way it would change, like it was upside down and it would go to the side. It would be in the corner of the page, and that really gave you that disoriented. You felt disoriented, and you really it as much as a book can be immersive. I think that really helped you become immersed in the story and experience what they were experiencing. So that was probably the part that I was most tense because it looks silly at first when you skip through it, but as you're
Mhm.
reading it and as you're into the story and the way that the text would change and the letters would go one way and then they'd come back down the other way, that's when I felt the most um, kind of just anxious or
Yeah.
affected. What about you?
Um, yeah, that definitely like helped to draw me in. I think that um, like a specific part in the book that I was just like freaked out and like pulled in. um, I think okay, this was like the first point in the book that I was like freaked out and in it was whenever Navidson first goes in and he's able to finally find his way out by following the sound of his daughter's voice.
Mm.
And whenever he comes out and she's just been standing there calling after him and tells her that she was having or tells him that she was having a nightmare. And I was like, oh, this is a creepy children book. um, yeah, that I think after that happened is as difficult as it was to kind of get into it to begin with because of some of those like dry patches. After that happened, I was like, oh, I'm in this book. Like I'm all in.
Or they would hear voices through the walls, and they were when the kids were missing. The mom would listen to the floor and to the walls trying to find them.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's creepy.
So
Yeah,
creepy.
yeah. And Lenore says almost like cave diving, just a bit more, just to get through this wedge. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Or whenever Wax and Jed were kind of running from Holloway after I think he shot Wax, right? And he was like tapping SOS and they could
Hmm.
hear it in every room in the house. Freaky.
Yeah.
It's funny. The book, I've read I've read books that are definitely like scarier and more of like ghosts or blood and guts and whatever. But there was something about this book that it freaked me out in a whole new way. Like a lot of many times I would read something and like get actual like chills on my body because it freaked me out.
Yeah.
And I think for me, I don't know if you would agree with this, sort of like Mark Danielewski. I think one of the things that he just did this in like such a masterful way to make it a creepy book is what was sort of hidden from you and what you didn't see. It wasn't just
Hmm.
laying all these cards out and look at this scary thing and look at this blood and guts and look at no, it was just like these little things along the way of like there might be something there, but you don't know. And that was, I don't know. Would you agree that, or what would you, in your opinion, what would you say made this book as creepy as it was?
I think the presentation and the all the information with it because it is immersive, but I excuse me, but I do think that you mentioned it on a little bit, but I think like the growls that you hear and
Mm,
I don't think it ever describes a creature really. It's just like a figure, and I think movies do that too. I think when movies give you too much visually and you see the monster, it takes away the that tension. So I think not going into detail of what it was or what was growling exactly or what it looked like, or if there was more than one of them. I think that added to it because you didn't know what it was. You didn't know if it could be seen. You didn't know if it was testing them. You didn't know if it was trying to kill them. You didn't know what
Yeah.
its motivations were. You didn't know or if it was just a random event that they just kind of stumbled into that they were just unlucky enough to find. But I did like the meteor stuff. I thought that was really cool. I thought that was really
Yeah.
neat. That was I wasn't expecting that, so I thought that was pretty creative. What did you think about that part?
Wait, which part?
The meteor, when it describes the meteor and the elements of the test.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Yeah, I thought that at that point, and because that's closer to the end of the book, I was like full up with like there's symbolism and there's metaphor and I was like, there's something in here, like
Yeah.
you know what I mean? I was so saturated in the idea of this book, every piece of it being a symbol of something else, being a metaphor for this other thing, and so on and so forth, that I got to that part. And I was like, I don't know what this means exactly, but yeah, it was I liked how it kind of offered an explanation, a possible explanation for a lot of the things, for why for what was happening and why this labyrinth existed or whatever.
Mhm.
But it didn't say this is why. It kept the truth obscured while offering an explanation.
'Cause isn't that more terrifying when you don't know and when you're left to think, what was that? What, 'cause
Yeah.
that's scarier than knowing because your imagination runs
Yes.
with it.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that that's why, for me, this book, which I mean, it's still with me. I'm still thinking about it, and I feel like I will be thinking about it for a long, long, long time to come, is because it wasn't just like wrapped up in some neat little package.
Mhm.
Like it left room to sort of interpret and wonder. Um, and I will continue to like stew on it. And I don't know, those are my favorite kind of books, and specifically for like horror type books. I think they're most effective when they leave it all open ended.
Mhm. And Ben says it's a little less haunting, but just as enigmatic. But if you enjoyed this book or enjoyed this, check out Wind Up Bird Chronicles. Let's check that out.
Yeah, I've seen that book before, and I think I have friends who have read it and really enjoyed it.
Hmm.
Yeah, I'll definitely have to look that up.
Yeah, Wind Up Bird Chronicles, and such a lucid and mind-bending book.
Yeah, yeah. I don't think that kind of stuff is for everyone, but it's definitely for me. I like books that kind of are disorienting and make you think.
Yeah, and so Tom was Nevidson's brother, right? Tom was the
Yeah,
brother that came. The way he died was effective too, because I didn't expect him to die.
I didn't either. He was such a great character too, giving just like that little bit of like sort of dark comedy relief to the whole thing,
Mm-hmm.
and being just a really like sympathetic character. And then he
Yeah,
just kind of got lost to the void.
and at that point, I was wondering if that was just he just was if it set out to get him, or if it just happened. He just happened to be in the right place at the right time and just unlucky. Because at that point, I was wondering if it was like an evil force that was doing it, or if it was just the universe trying to kill you. Like how it
Yeah,
always is. Because I think
yeah,
if it wanted to kill anyone, it would have killed Navidson and the crew.
yeah, yeah.
But
Yeah, I have this sort of one of so many theories and ideas. Um, I don't know. In a sense, it seemed kind of, I don't know. I'm just going to bounce this idea off of you and see what you think. Um, Sort of this feeling that perhaps Karen actually had some sort of control over
Hmm.
the whole thing, and the way that the labyrinth was sort of responding to the way the labyrinth behaved was kind of responding to her mental state at any given time, especially
Hmm.
considering in the end when when Davidson gets back to her, that her, like, how else could that have happened but her being like receptive to it, and the wall opening up and him getting out. um so yeah, just this kind of I don't know, what do you think about that?
I hadn't thought of that, but that's really, really interesting. And now that you mention it, it makes sense now that I'm thinking back. And the kids are never really hurt. They're kind of just in the middle of it. The little things happen, nothing really serious. And um, yeah, I hadn't thought of that, but that's a really great observation.
And also, like, she's, if I recall correctly, um it seems like she's really kind of, she seems like a side character, but like the development of um her sort of mental and emotional state for a side character, she's pretty well developed in that way. It talks a lot about her fears and her feelings and her sadness, and there's some of that about Navidson, but I don't even feel like that he's as well developed in that way as she is.
Hmm.
So that's kind of interesting that she would be developed so thoroughly in that way.
Hmm. You're right,
So
because it does go into detail on her affairs and her childhood trauma that she experienced, and her psychiatrist, their observations of her in the news articles, and it goes into a lot of detail with her history.
mhm.
So, did she will Navidson to come back at the end and not die? Because I thought for sure he was going to die. I mean,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It seemed
hmm,
like it, but it was just like, would he have ever gotten out if she hadn't shown up and like opened the opened the video, and like, would that have happened had she not been there? And what was significant about her being there? Because we watched this sort of dissolution of their marriage, and then it kind of like comes back together in the
hmm.
end, I guess, whenever she decides that she wants it to.
I think it mentions too in the beginning of that chapter that I think it says something to the effect of she wasn't sure why she went back, because she at first she said I'm never going back. I think it was
Yeah,
so that
yeah,
was another part that was like because she I think she mentions that she's not sure why she went back, but
yeah,
then all these things happen, and she was ready to sell the salad and all the different owners over the years and things like that.
yeah, yeah. And like, despite her fears and her claustrophobia and her rejection of the whole idea of the labyrinth, in the end, she goes into it, which I think is really interesting. And that's like Navidson's salvation.
Hmm, not bad. That's a great book.
Yeah.
Yeah, not
Yeah.
bad. I hadn't thought of that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny to me, after they originally got out of the house. I mean, though, Tom didn't make it. Um, but after they got out of the house, which I think, earlier I said about 2/3 of the way through, that's when I was like, this is how I thought the book was going to end. And then we have another third of the book to go. So after they all got out of the house, I was just like, well, what are we doing here now? um, and Karen, kind of her like creating doing the interviews and the documentary and all that kind of stuff, I was like, okay, like, good for her, cool. But then this grand finale with Navidson going back in, I was just like, okay, this is what we're all here for.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. It would make sense that she would be. It somehow attached itself to her, or she had some kind of control over it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Hmm.
What did you think about whenever Davidson was like trapped in the labyrinth in the end, and it talks about like the only thing he carries, one of the only things he carries with him throughout and through that shrinking tunnel and all the stuff is one book, and the book is House of Leaves.
Mhm.
And that he as he's like running out of hope and will and all, and he's reading the book and like burning the pages for light as he goes. That might be one of my favorite parts of the book, actually. Like, I feel like that was so evocative to me, the idea of that. How did you feel about that?
And then it went into detail on how long each match would last and how long each page would last. So
Yeah,
he would have like 2 minutes and something. I think that just brought home the point of how desperate and obsessed and just determined he was to keep going. He was, but I know there's got to be more to it than just that. With him reading House of Leaves and
yeah,
using it for light, I think there's got to be more to it. And I think everything there's so much, and what makes this book even more, I think, impressive is that there's so many little details like that have meaning.
yeah,
I think everything is there for a reason, even if there's a little too much of it sometimes. I
yeah,
think it's all there for a reason.
yeah. I think it's to further that point, that he's reading this book and lighting the pages on fire as he goes so he can continue to read the next page and so on and so forth, as it all's just sort of turning to ash. And the house is on, what is it, Ash Tree Lane or whatever.
Oh, I didn't catch that.
And the walls inside of the labyrinth they're how does he describe them, like gray ash or ashen or something like that. And in
Hmm.
the end, he's like, the book is like becoming ash. I just
Oh,
got a chill
interesting.
even saying that. Oh my gosh. Whenever you have these kind of thoughts and then you say it out loud, and you're like, ooh,
Yeah,
ooh.
yeah. There's just so much of that kind of thing in this book, though.
Yeah,
Right? It's wild.
yeah.
Uh, the Johnny storyline. Um, the, how did you feel about the two, Johnny's story and Davidson's story? Because it okay, so in the especially in the first half, there's portions of Johnny's story, and then it kind of cuts off, and it goes into Davidson's story. Did you read Johnny's portion or whichever portion you were reading first, and then go back and read the Davidson stuff, or did you read straight through?
It kind of went back and forth. Are you like, you mean whenever there would specifically be a footnote and then it would link to like in the middle of the story and then link to Johnny?
Yeah, or there was a few parts when it seemed like he was reading. Um, it would kind of cut off, then it would go off into another. I know it's hard to see in here, but yeah, because I was just reading page by page, and I wondered if I should be reading that point of view first, and then going back and reading the other part separately, because I was just reading straight through.
Yeah. I would, I mean, all of his interjections or footnotes, um, but it would depend. It would depend. Sometimes I would like finish up the section I was reading or the chapter or whatever and go back.
Hmm.
But I think I mostly would read it kind of as I went, like in the moment. But occasionally I would be so into like the Davidson part that I'd be like, hold on, Johnny, I'll come back to you in a minute. And like sort of finish up, whatever was happening and then go back and read it.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So maybe I missed it, but so Johnny's mom wasn't crazy.
I think that's the big question. If I like read and interpreted it correctly, it seemed like it seemed like Johnny was kind of that's what he was like sort of working through and sort of grappling with,
Hmm.
was maybe like, what was she crazy, was she not, like Because in one moment it makes it sound like she was, and that she injured him on purpose, or like, strangled him or whatever. And then later on, it's like, no, that's not what happened at all, and she was just taken away. So I'm not sure, really.
Yeah, because when you read the letters, and I think it's the first half of the book, it talks about how she was trying to strangle him, and that's where the purple marks came from, and then the purple
Yeah.
ink. But at the end, I think the way that I read it was she was hanging on to him as they were pulling her away. She
Yeah.
was trying to not let him go, and
Yeah.
that's the 5.5 minutes that you had talked about earlier that I didn't catch the first time. So I think that was part of that 5.5 minutes
Yeah.
when they were pulling her away.
Yeah.
So, hmm.
Yeah. And it just kind of makes you wonder, like, if she wasn't crazy or whatever, if she wasn't having some sort of mental break, why was she taken away then? Like, because he frames the scars on his arms as like him he was trying to catch something that was falling, a pure accident, and then she's taken away. But in the end, he seems to come to the conclusion that, yeah, she was just being pulled away from him and he was trying to hang on to her. So it's just like, then why was she taken away? Like, it's just kind of this loop of, you just kind of go around and around about it.
Ben says such a lucid and mind-bending book. That's for sure.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
Yeah. And there's just so much in this book. There's just so many things.
Yeah.
I had a couple of things marked. Any other parts that really stood out to you?
Before we move on about his mother, I think towards the end he also, I think it's in that same reference of his, where he says, having experienced his mom being pulled away and that 5.5 minutes in his life or whatever. I think it might be in that same reference, or it might, or somewhere. It's towards the end where he talks about how he's kind of, in order to cope with her absence and what happened, he has to think of her negatively, and he has to think of her as having, harmed him or been crazy or whatever. So then that kind of pulls her entire role in the thing into question. Like, has he in his mind turned her into this, just, this insane person in order to,
To cope.
And that's in reality not quite the case, but it's just like a coping mechanism for him, and in turn he's sort of losing it.
And
Anyway.
I think we had mentioned earlier, page 619 talks about, one of her letters says, the next letter I will encode as follow. Use the first letter of each word to build subsequent words and phrases. Your exquisite intuition will help you sort out these spaces. I've spent this via a night nurse. Our secret will be safe.
Yeah,
Did you decode that?
I did. That was some slow going, trying to like read that and decode it all at the same time.
Yeah, it was a lot.
Yeah,
See if I can find it.
I thought that was a nice touch. So I really enjoyed that. But yeah, in that letter, she like paints this picture of being abused by the staff, and her just this horrific experience that she's having. And I think at this point he's supposed to be like a little kid.
Mm-hmm.
Or not a little kid, but a kid still. Like, I think maybe like 14-ish. And she's like giving these like dark details in this like encoded letter.
Yeah, it's pretty heavy, about how she's being abused and assaulted.
Mm-hmm.
At the end, you must save me, Johnny. In the name of your father, I must escape this place or I will die.
Mm.
I mean, creepy.
It is creepy. It is creepy. It's interesting how his father is sort of portrayed by his mother as like that he was just great and like loving and wonderful in this sort of knight in shining armor, and yet he was the one who like took her away and institutionalized her, but she still looked at him as just being, you know, this perfect husband. I wouldn't be happy with my husband.
Yeah. No, I wouldn't think so. And Andrea says, what if he died and the whole story is his mother's way to deal with her guilt, similar to what David Lynch did in Mulholland Drive.
That's an interesting theory.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Huh.
That's a thinker.
Mm-hmm.
I need to go back and watch Mulholland Drive.
Yeah, it's been a while. That's another movie that's kind of like the mind bending and.
Yeah. Sticks with you.
Oh yeah. Let's see. I have a few things tabbed here that I wanted to bring up, but I think we talked about most of them. There's some great writing too that I thought was a tab, because whenever you read something that really sticks out to you, I'd like to put a tab on it. But I think when Johnny's sleeping around, um, one of the lines on 265 was, people frequently comment on the emptiness in a one night stand, but emptiness here has always been just another word for darkness. Blind encounters, writing sonnets no one can ever read, desire communicated in the vague language of sex. I thought that was really cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't mean anything. It's just there's no meaning to it.
Yeah.
And you wonder, because of what Johnny's been through, if he did that sort of thing to like as a way to cope, I guess.
Yeah.
Looking for some kind of connection with someone.
Yeah. I think that I think it kind of, Johnny's part, it sort of seems to all boil down to this like experience that he had with his mother, and he's like seeking the affection of all these women.
Thumper.
Yeah. Thumper. That's not a great nickname, on a side note.
No.
Yeah, I think it was, you know, just the same as him, just like taking drugs and partying and all this stuff and all the women, and yeah, like it at first it's like, oh, like gross, but he has this way with words, and he's having this experience, and like in that passage, the way he's describing it, and I think that that's what ultimately makes it feel just so sad and makes him so pitiable as a character, because he's clearly, he's just kind of this party boy, but he has this depth, and he's intelligent, and the way he writes, and it's just like this wasted potential, and it makes him just sad. Poor Johnny. Like the more I think about him, it's just sad.
Really just a sad, just an unfortunate set of circumstances. And I'm not sure if you know, because Jeremy Fee did a video on this book, and he mentioned that, I don't know if you remember Poe, from the musician from the late 90s, early 2000s.
Yeah.
His sister, or this is her brother.
Right.
And
right.
the day that this book was released was the same day that her album was released. I think it was 2000, 2001. So I wonder if there's something in that album, because I think it's connected somehow, is what I've heard.
Yeah, I think it's I think it maybe even references that in the acknowledgments in here, although I haven't I've been meaning to like pull that album up, but, and I think I read in the article I was mentioning earlier about how Mark Danielewski like read the book and was just like overcome with emotion, but that album that she wrote is almost like supposed to be kind of a companion piece to the book, and vice versa.
I have it here somewhere. I need to listen to it again. Lenore says, "Oh yeah, great album. It's a very atmospheric album." Hmm.
I'll definitely have to look at. I've never listened to it, so I'm gonna have to look it up.
I wonder if there are connections there somehow.
Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah.
Yeah, and she play. It's a side note, but she plays every instrument on all her albums. She plays every portion.
Really?
Yeah, she plays all the instruments and does everything on her own, and then she would record the albums. That's
Yeah.
crazy, crazy talented.
Wow. Yeah, I'm
Yeah,
definitely looking this up.
yeah, um, yeah. I saw her live when she came. This many, many, many moons ago. But she was with Depeche Mode, so I remember
Okay,
seeing her live. Yeah. Anyway,
that's
um,
cool.
yeah. So yeah, I think, and the size is a little bit deceiving, I think, but it's really not because the story ends at 528.
Yeah,
There's a, and you think, well, I'm not going to read the rest of it, but you end up reading
yeah,
the majority of it.
yeah.
Hmm. Wow. Any favorite, or I should say, anything you would change about it?
Uh, yeah. I mean, uh, some of those more the scientific stuff. I don't know that I would take any of that stuff out. But I would probably shorten it a little bit. Um, I think depending on how used to that type of technical writing someone is, how used to that they are, and how much they like that would. Some people I'm sure read that and they're just like, oh, I just love this. I just love this textbooky style of writing.
Yeah.
um, for me, my attention span, you know, I have a little bit of attention span for that kind of stuff to a certain degree. But I think even for me, it was just a little too excessive. I would probably cut that stuff like in half.
Mhm. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
There are two mixes of Hey Pretty, and one of them, Mark Danilewski takes the narration part. Oh, hmm.
Mm.
One of her post song from before that particular album, Angry Johnny, was inspired or a part of the character creation. Yeah, I remember Johnny, and when I knew that they were brother and sister, and Johnny's was a character name, I thought it's got to be right. It's got to be a reference to that song.
Man, I am missing out. I need after we're done, I'm gonna like pull up her entire discography and just dig in.
Yeah, it's Angry Johnny is it was a pretty popular song like in the mid '90s or so. I think
Okay.
that was like Letnor says it was the album before that, but it is
Mm.
a scorned lover type of song.
Ah,
Yeah.
interesting.
So maybe from the perspective of one of these women he had been with.
Oh, that's really interesting.
A whole nother layer we're opening up here.
Yeah. I'm curious because I mean, I haven't really researched the ins and outs of Mark Danielewski, like how long it took him to write it, when he started it. I know very little about that other than I think the book started like he was just writing it online and maybe publishing it in pieces or something. But I'd be curious to know if his sister, if Poe, if she was like privy to it all along, or
Hmm.
like the kind of what discussions they had about that, like if she knew where it was going.
Or the character name. Maybe
Yeah,
the book was like you said. Maybe the book was being written while she was writing that song, and she used that
yeah.
name.
Like were
Wow,
they
and,
writing in tandem or like?
and speaking and there's even a spot here with Braille on it that of course we can't read, but there's Braille on one page, and then there's another page that has a couple music notes on it.
Yeah,
So I wonder what that was.
yeah. I meant to. I have a piano. I meant to like play that. Go to my piano and like play it on the piano and see what it sounds like. But I'm just like, is that gonna make a doorway open up in my living room?
You're gonna need an extra room in your house.
Yeah, it's
I
like
thought it was,
Zelda
yeah.
or something where you like do the code and then all of a sudden there's like a doorway.
Yeah, you may want to avoid that. And I did like when they call the police when this new addition appears and the police come and are like, well, your house is bigger, right? Who am I getting?
Yeah.
What can I do about it? They all kind of laughed it off, and it's this dimension or this other whole
Yeah.
world.
Yeah, I think the cop had like what my response would have been, which is to like go in for 5 seconds and then like nope right out of there and pretend like it never happened.
And didn't he walk out without a word or something like that? He walked in and walked out and just left.
He was like, "No, I'm not
Yeah,
doing that."
yeah, I'm out of here.
Yeah. That seems like a more natural reaction.
Yeah, and not the hey, let's create a crew, let's get a crew of people to go in and but like I think like you've said, I think it became an obsession for Davidson, so he went through all this trouble to assemble these people and all this equipment, and he wanted to film everything, and it became this obsession for him that he was absorbed by.
Yeah. Yeah. If let's say that something like that appeared in your house, would you go in?
I am out of here if that happens. I am not gonna. I know I'm not. I might peek in, but I'm not going in there.
You're not stepping a foot in.
Nope. Under the square footage, I'll just put infinite
Yeah.
square footage. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that like from the moment it appeared, Davidson was just obsessed with going in.
Nope.
No.
Yeah. What about you? Would you go in?
Maybe. I think I would have to. I mean, no. I don't know. I mean, I would have to. First of all, I would check into a hotel and then like let my mind acclimate to the idea of it even being there to begin with. Then I would gather up a group of friends to come with me. Then we'd all hold hands and kind of go in sideways.
Don't let me go.
Don't let go.
Yeah. Someone's gonna run the other way as soon as the first weird thing that happens. Someone will
They're
run
gone.
back. Yeah. And then the whole thing falls apart. And then Lenoir says, "Nope, salt and burn it. We're about to move."
Yeah.
And I will say, I was hoping Davidson would die. I was a little sad that he lived.
Yeah.
It's a pessimist. It's the cynical in me, but I think I was hoping he would not make it.
Yeah. Yeah. I felt for him being sort of a central character, I felt fairly indifferent to him.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely would have preferred him to die over Tom.
Yeah.
Because I love Tom.
I think that was purposeful, though. I think that Tom was that character that we all was like, oh, he's this cuddly, just kind of goofy, black sheep of the family, and he's just kind of trying to connect with his estranged brother, trying to connect with him again, and then he ends up dying. I think that was I think he set us up for that.
Yeah, and especially because he didn't, he didn't really want to go in to begin with. I mean, obviously, like he got to the top of the stairs and was like, "Yeah, I'm not going down there." Which to camp alone at the top of the stairs for days, I think is in a lot of ways much more brave than staying with your friends and going down. Yeah, I mean, I think that's the fact that he would be willing to do that for his brother, just like definitely endeared him to me more.
Poor Tom.
I know. And on a side note, this is so funny. Like, I don't know, like whenever you read books, if you envision them as people like actors or character, like, because I tend to oftentimes with a character in a book, I'll envision them as a certain person. But Tom, for me, I imagined him as, have you seen Christmas Vacation,
Mhm.
Cousin Eddie.
Oh, Randy Quaid.
Yeah. In my mind, Tom was kind of like Cousin Eddie.
Yeah, it's kind of that free, like that free, just floating out in the world kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, just
Yeah.
really unassuming and goofy and
Super
harmless,
nice.
but yeah, super nice.
Kind of a mess.
Yeah, a mess. Yeah, dumping his RV uh in the storm sewer or what, in the street. Yeah,
Yeah.
his underwear.
Yeah.
Yeah, poor cousin Eddie.
Yeah. Yeah. So like in my mind, because I was sort of envisioning him as Cousin Eddie, which is Cousin Eddie's he's a great character. So whenever Tom did die, it felt even more real to me. Like, no, not Cousin Eddie. Oh.
That was a tough one. That was a good death. It was a
Yeah.
very effective, very affecting.
Yeah. He was pretty much like, I think, one of the most likable characters in the book. So for me, like coming back around to the idea of Navidson dying, it wouldn't have had nearly that kind of effect on me if he had.
Hmm.
In fact, I
Yeah,
think that
yeah.
Navidson in a lot of ways was every bit as unlikable as Johnny Truant.
I think at the beginning, Navison was trying to connect with his wife and or it wasn't his wife yet. He was trying to connect with her and the kids and
Yeah.
trying to move away from the city and trying to kind of get a quiet place where they can all kind of spend more time together. I think he was trying. That was his intention.
Yeah.
But I think again, I think he becomes obsessed with this room, this doorway. So yeah, I think
Yeah.
he had good intentions at first, but it just got sidetracked. And I was
Yeah.
hoping they wouldn't connect at the end. If he was going to survive, I thought, okay, at least don't have them get back together. And then they ended up getting married. I thought that was kind of, yeah. I don't know. I
Yeah.
guess it was redemption kind of thing, but
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Little too happy for me.
Yeah. Yeah. I would agree on that. I do tend to prefer kind of unhappy endings, so to speak, or more realistic endings. Where I think in reality, I mean, obviously this is kind of has this fantastical thing going on, but in reality, if something like that had happened, I feel like most people, if they reconcile, it would take far longer, and it would be a lot more painful, and so it did have a little bit of a happily ever after quality to it. So I'm not a big fan of that either. But I think for what the book was trying to do, kind of pulling it full circle, um, I kind of get that in a way.
And I guess maybe it's a contrast between the end of that storyline and then the end of Johnny's, because Johnny's can be the end of Johnny's storyline can be interpreted as very dark and hopeless, and you really don't know what happened. It's not definitively said what happened to him. So I guess
Yeah.
if there were two dark endings to both, maybe that was too maybe that would be too much of a.
Yeah.
So maybe he needed a little bit of levity at the end, or a little bit of happiness and hope,
Yeah.
redemption at the end, because it would have been too dark or too depressing if
Yeah.
everything fell apart.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I would have, which by the way, mentioning how Johnny's story ends, I definitely sort of, because it is open for interpretation. And I definitely interpret it as like a pretty dark ending as well. Like my imagination for like where Johnny's life is, even at the end, the way it's described doesn't even feel like the good qualities of it are even real.
Mm-hmm.
Like in my mind, he's still like declining, and he's still losing touch, and this sort of a little bit nicer of a picture has been painted, but it definitely didn't feel real to me.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, I don't know where I was going with that.
There's so much to this book. There's just so many little details everywhere, and like the check mark, I didn't even catch that until you mentioned it. It's like, oh wow, that gave me chills as you were talking
Yeah.
about it.
Yeah, and I just randomly saw it. I don't even know why. My eyes just happened to, like, when I was on that page, just go all the way to the corner, and I was like, oh, I found Waldo.
Yeah. And then there's so many, because I think in a normal book that would stand out to you
Yeah,
because it's unusual. But in this book, there's so many footnotes and just weird text layouts that you kind of like, oh, I don't even notice that because it's like House of Leaves. It's not, you know.
yeah, yeah. You get like sort of desensitized to
Mhm,
like all the weird stuff that's going on.
mhm.
Yeah, and I feel like, I don't know if this happened to you at all, but I feel like there were a couple of instances where there was like a reference to a footnote and I could never find the footnote. Or like
Happens
a
to me
couple
too.
of
Yeah.
footnotes that, vice versa, like I never found where they were referenced.
Yeah, there's a few that referenced pages that I wasn't, because it would mention, sometimes it would mention another book and it would say page, and you would go back and you'd find something, and then sometimes there would be nothing, or sometimes it would say refer to page or see page
Yeah,
229, and I would go back and I had no idea what they were talking about. So I'm not sure if that was on purpose to help to just keep you disoriented and confused and engaged, or if that was, I don't know, maybe there's
yeah,
more to it than that too.
yeah, yeah. I think that was kind of one of the ways, like I was saying earlier, about having to sort of submit to the idea that I'm not going to necessarily, like, I don't have to read and understand every last word, but just sort of accept the effect, the overall effect, which is hard for me because I want to like read and digest every last teeny tiny bit of it.
Mhm.
um,
Yeah.
but I think
I
that's
think
kind
this
of the
this
beauty of it.
I think one read through it I don't think is enough. I think it takes maybe more than two to, or
Yeah,
maybe more than that. I don't, I'm sure
yeah,
you could just find somewhere online that it would break every little detail down and just, but I don't know if I want to do that. I think
yeah,
I'd rather reread it just because I
yeah,
want to experience it again. And part of the fun is finding those little things like the check mark, like
yeah,
the feeling you had when you saw that check mark. Like, what other books can you experience that kind of thing with?
yeah,
So it's kind of, it's just an experience.
yeah. um, and honestly too, I think I don't know if I may look online and sort of see what, because I, there's got to be like a gazillion forums of people talking about this book. Um, Even at that though, those are, unless it comes from Mark Danielewski's mouth, that's just their theories as well.
It's true.
It's all like just all these theories.
And I hope he doesn't. I hope he doesn't just give someone the key to, or just explain everything. That kind
Yeah,
of takes the fun away from it.
yeah, yeah, for sure. Um, One other thing I wanted to mention or talk about a little bit is the part where Johnny, he's talking about hearing the story from, I think he said it was from Tex or whoever, about the ship that was sinking. Do you remember
Oh
that?
yeah. What was he, the captain who wore red shirts? Is that the one you're?
That might have been it. It was like the ship that was sinking, and but there was one person on the ship that was still alive, like in a sealed chamber inside of the ship as it was sinking, and could sense that like it was going down, that it hit a shelf and kept going down, and he was alone in this chamber, knowing that that was the end, and it was just a matter of like running out of oxygen.
Hmm.
um which, like, in relation to like it kind of I feel like in the end, whenever Navidson goes back into the labyrinth alone, was kind of mirroring the idea of that story of like everyone else is gone and you're just like going down into it, and knowing, especially it would have made more sense in relation to that earlier story for Navidson to have died in the end, because
Yeah.
it would have been like a good mirror reflection of this. almost like um, foreshadowing what's going to happen to Davidson or whatever.
Oh, I didn't even put that together about those two stories. I remember the other one was about the captain who wore red shirts, and they asked him, why do you wear red?" And he said, "Because when
Oh
I get
yeah,
cut, no one knows that I'm bleeding."
yeah,
And then at the end, this fleet is coming towards them, and he tells them, "Go get my brown pants."
yeah, yeah. I think that
Yeah.
was one of his jokes.
Oh, was it? Yeah.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, it was pretty funny.
Yeah,
That was a good one. I
yeah,
laughed out loud, which is, yeah. It was, I think you need those moments of levity. You know, you need those little comedic moments here, just sprinkled in a little bit, just because
yeah.
there's so much.
I feel like that even added to kind of the creepiness of Tom's experience. Like he was trying to make the best of it and telling jokes and like making like shadow puppets or whatever. And so in a way it was kind of hair raising because in horror movies that that's when the monster shows up and the person is whatever. So you're just like your jokes are funny, but something bad is coming for you.
Yeah. Yeah. And he was talking to the monster, and
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, and it was really interesting how he was so just like, all right, Mr. Monster, come and get me, like come and get me. I know you're coming, but that's not how he ended up dying. But Holloway was commenting on something following him, and
Stalking him.
yeah, but obviously not in any sort of comedic way. He
Mhm.
was, kind of going crazy in his last hours, but he did end up going that way.
Such a crazy book. Such a wild ride.
Yeah, so good.
Yeah. So what are your final thoughts on this one? What are your takeaways?
Oh man, too many to name. Final thoughts. Well, I loved it. I'm going to be thinking about it probably for years to come. One of those books that I think is probably always going to stick with me. And I'll probably, go back and read it some different ways.
Mhm.
And as far as like anyone out there, if you're interested in reading this book, um, yeah, like we kind of mentioned earlier on throughout this whole show, be be open and willing to just take it in small doses, and I think that is how this book can is most profound when you're not
Mhm.
racing through it. Whenever you take the time to kind of like sit and stew and think, uh, yeah. But yeah, I want to share it with everyone, but at the same time, I'm like,
Yeah. I
are you sure?
don't know.
Okay, read it, but
All right.
here are all these caveats.
Yeah. Andres says, if you're looking for an encouragement to read The Familiar, make sure to take a look at the YouTube video, Why Has No One Read The Familiar?
Ah, interesting.
Yeah. And Lauren, I want to be the first to congratulate you on 500 subscribers
What?
on
I have
YouTube.
500 subscribers?
You do. You had 498 yesterday, and I was hoping that we would be able to. Yeah.
Ah, yay.
So congratulations. Quite the
Thank
milestone.
you.
Nice
Now I get
job.
the community tab.
Yeah. It takes a week or two, but yeah, you'll get it here in a
Ah,
couple days. Yeah.
I've been wanting that community tab for so long.
It's so cool. Yeah, it's so neat. So congratulations. Really
Well,
happy.
thank you.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Oh, yay.
Yeah, I wanted to look before we wrapped up about with that. Yeah, 500. Nice job.
Oh, thank you. That's super exciting.
Yeah, it's really cool.
Well, what are your takeaways from the book?
Pretty much the same. I think it's something that you have to I would say take your time with it and don't rush through it, and just even if you read it like a chapter here and there and come back to it, take breaks. Don't feel like you have to read it. Don't rush. Just enjoy the ride. don't think so much about the conclusion or how the story is going to end. Just enjoy the experience. It's not really. It's more of an experience than it is reading a
Mhm.
story from front to back.
Yeah.
Just go with it.
Yeah. It's also, I think, a lot of books, if you put them down and step away, you forget what's happening, but
Mhm.
you don't forget what's happening in this book. So like, it's safe to step away. You're not going to stop thinking about it.
Yeah, it's one of those that yeah, it's definitely different kind of book. But
Yeah.
yeah, I think that I can see certain people not enjoying it. But you do have to just open yourself up to it's not it took me a little while to kind of get a rhythm with it. It took me
Mhm.
and it was funny because when I think you had made the comment, um, it starts to get easier, 150 pages in or so, and I was right around there,
Yeah.
and that's when it's really started to okay, I kind of I'm starting to get it. I'm starting to kind
Yeah.
of fall into a rhythm with it. Feel like I know what's how to read it and how to go back and forth, and so that's when I started to kind of feel better about it. But yeah, it takes a little while
Yeah.
to get
Yeah.
to it. Lots of food for thought. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. I feel like we could just talk about this book all day and never like get to the end of like thoughts and ideas and theories.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna I think I'm gonna give it like 6 months and then reread it.
Yeah.
Now that we're talking about it.
Yeah. It would be fun to maybe do that again, like as a group read. It would be, or like if there's a group that has read it before and wants to like kind of try different ways of reading it and discussing it, and like specifically
Yeah.
like combing through, and that might be fun.
Let me know when. Maybe we can do like summertime, like June or July.
Or maybe just next Halloween.
Yeah, we could do that
This
too.
is
Yeah,
like perfect for October.
it's perfect. Yeah, perfect. And I think it even references October 31st and the dates.
Hmm.
So yeah, that was just good.
Yeah.
Fortunate, fortunate timing.
Yeah. Yeah. Whenever I got to that part, I was like, nice.
Yeah, I was like, oh, right on. Yeah, that's kind of neat.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool. So what would be your rating as of
Today,
today? Today, yeah.
today I'm saying 4.5.
And you would round up if you had to choose, or would you round
Yeah,
down?
I would round up if I had to choose. Um, yeah, it was just way too infectious in my mind to like split hairs over stuff. When a book is like that engaging, that's worth a lot.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. I would go 4.5. I'd go 4.5, but I would probably round up. And I was 4 when we started talking, but there's so much that I didn't catch or that it's just fun to think about.
Yeah,
That it just how many books or how many how many books feel like that kind of do you have these kind of thoughts when you're done with most of them, most books when I finish them it's like okay, on to the next one.
yeah,
You even if you enjoy it, it's fun reading it, but you put it down and then you kind of forget.
yeah. I
But
just move on.
I won't forget about this one.
Yeah, yeah. It's more than just some story,
Mhm.
and that's worth a lot. So
So creative, so
yeah,
different, so unique.
yeah,
I mean, it's so neat. The
yeah,
just the amount of time they must have spent putting this together is insane. I wonder how long it took to write and to organize. And
yeah. I'd be really curious as well. Yeah, the amount of effort. I mean, and the way that so much stuff. Yeah, yeah. I just imagine like how you see in the movies at the police station with all the strings going out to all the stuff. Like you'd have to do this kind of mind map to keep everything straight.
I imagine them having that.
Yeah,
Just the big wall full of pictures and all the strings.
yeah,
Yeah, you almost need that because there's so much to it.
yeah,
How do you keep track of all this?
yeah,
I'm sure they had some kind of system to track.
yeah. Well,
Wild.
if you ever get Mark Danielewski on the line for an interview, please invite me along.
Yeah. Who know? I don't know. Maybe. I don't think he gives. I don't think he cares about me, but yeah, I'm sure he
Never
gets a lot
know.
of requests. Yeah, take a shot in the
You
dark
have
one
a
of these days.
gift for you have a gift for it, so I wouldn't put it past you to get him.
I don't know. That's that's a lot of pressure. I don't know. I don't think I
I'm
pulled it
like,
off.
do it, do
Probably tell me, go away. Who are you?
it.
Yeah, I'll send an email. Why not?
Yeah. I'm playing, but it
I'm
would
gonna
be
hold you to that.
fascinating to talk to him about this book.
If by some miracle he does come on, I'm holding you to it that you're gonna join. Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay.
I'm in.
All right. I
I'm
have
in.
witnesses. So
Yeah.
Dre says makes you wonder if someone ever asked Danielewski if he's a pantser or plotter. Yeah, he's probably both. Yeah, I don't. That'd be a good question for him for sure.
Yeah. Well, I will start also working on my questions for him, just in case.
Just in case, you never
Be
know.
prepared.
Yeah, that's a big one.
Yeah.
That'd be awesome. Who knows? Maybe it'll work out.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for reading it with me. I know, like my wife, like Brandy, my wife, didn't quite finish it. She has a few pages left. I know Yolene DNF'd it.
Yeah.
And Ashley was about halfway through. So I look, if I would have known, I probably would have planned this like 2 months. Started at 2 months
Yeah.
before we were planning on meeting, just because there's so much to it. But so thanks for hanging in there and reading the whole thing. It's been a lot of fun. So
oh yeah, for sure. Sure. Thanks for hosting this and having me on. This has been great fun.
Yeah. Let's do it again in a few months and then you'll get to host it.
Yeah, let's do it.
All right.
All right, cool.
Gonna hold you to that. I'm not gonna forget.
All right.
I'll be bugging you. All right.
Keep bugging me.
Cool. Well, thanks again for coming by. Thanks for everyone in the chat for dropping in and asking questions and making comments. Give us things I didn't think of. So
yeah,
it's always fun hearing everyone's perspectives. So hope everyone has a safe and happy Halloween. Be careful.
Yeah.
Don't eat any strange candy from anyone.
Yeah. Happy Halloween.
Yeah. If you aren't already, go subscribe to Lauren's channel. She's at 500 subs. So again, congratulations. That's a huge milestone. Great job.
Thank you.
And we will talk to you all soon. Have a good one.
Bye.